right, welcome to my presentation of the double play model. This is Tom Rutkowski with Innovative Retirement Strategies, and you're watching this because you just paid for the double play model spreadsheet, and more than likely you're staring at it and you don't understand what you're looking at or the calculations. So the point of this video is to simply walk you through it. One, I just want to explain everything to you. And then two, I want to show you how you can modify the data if you're able to get your own illustrations and you don't want to talk to a life insurance agent, because I'd be happy to simply run the illustrations and plug it into the model for you. But if you find yourself here having bought the model and you want to figure out how to plug your own data into it, that's what this is for. So I'm just going to jump over to the last tab in here. This is the tab is labeled Export Illustration at the bottom. This is the raw Excel output from certain insurance companies' illustration software. And the entire model is built to work off of this. So if you want to update the numbers in the model, you would need to type in or overwrite the data that are in this sheet right here, or at least create a substitute set, because what I do with this is I simply make a copy of it and come over to here, the paste where it says paste illustration here, and I simply paste it over the old numbers. And I'm not going to do that here because it's already updated. But that automatically, now every single calculation in the spreadsheet flows back to here. So if you've got your own data set, your own illustration, just make sure the columns and ages, actually the ages will populate, but just make sure that the data in the columns matches up with your illustration. All right, I'm going to go through these backwards. So this min and max tab, this does not show any calculations. This is here simply to show you the difference between a minimally funded life insurance policy and a maximum overfunded life insurance policy. So the graph that you're looking at there is showing two policies. Both have a $20,000 annual premium. Only one is solved for the maximum death benefit that you can get for $20,000. And the other is solved for the minimum death benefit that you can get for $20,000. And the red line is showing the minimally funded policy. The blue lines are showing the maximum overfunded policy. So you can see that $20,000 could get a 45-year-old male a policy with just over a $2 million death benefit. And then the bottom upward sloping red line shows you the accumulation of the cash value over time. So top red line is the death benefit, bottom red line is the accumulating cash value. The blue shows you the death benefit and the cash values for a maximum overfunded policy. So here, the corridor of about, looks like about $300,000 of death benefit over the cash value is growing as the cash value grows, but the increment of death benefit on top of the cash value remains constant. And you can see that eventually, out near age 77, it looks like the death benefit crosses over the death benefit that you would have had you just bought a minimally funded life insurance policy. So this is just here when I'm sitting down with a client to cover the basics so that people understand that there's a big difference between a policy that's maximum overfunded and one that is minimally funded. And if you try to plug in a policy that's minimally funded, you're going to see what this looks like as well. All right, this next graph over is spreadsheet is called Annualized Return. I'm going to blow up the magnification on there a little bit so you can see it. This is showing S&P 500 changes from 1990 until 2020. So about 31 years. And basically, given any cap that you can plug in the upper left corner, you can see what a hypothetical IUL would have earned during that time. So caps used to be 12%, but now they're more like 4.8% on the S&P 500. As of the creation of this video, June of 2022, interest rates are rising due to the inflation. And I would expect that cap rates will soon follow for most companies. In fact, many have already started raising their cap rates. But what we're looking at here is growth of $100. That's just the best way to calculate an annualized rate of return. So if we scroll down at the end of 2020, you can see what $100 would have grown to had it been invested in the index or in a hypothetical IUL. So the annualized rate of return, I'm rolling it up several different ways. You can see obviously the 31-year number, and then the 31-year result here. But I'm looking at annualized returns for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30-year periods. And really what we're doing here is we're looking at where did we finish up the year in 2015 compared to where we finished up the year in 2020. And what interest rate would it have taken to get from 365 at the end of the year to 497? And when you do the fancy math, that works out to be 4.73%. Look at 10 years, it's 5.54. 15 years is 4.89. So you get the idea. If we go back to what cap rates used to be just a few short years ago, and we scroll down, you can see that the data update automatically. So just a few years ago, it was not unreasonable to expect an IUL to perform at over 7% when interest rates were just a little bit higher. So in any case, you can project whatever rates. I use this to, I shouldn't say you can use it to project. What I use this for is to show somebody how I came up with the illustrated rates that I'm using. And basically these are extreme. To take an 8% cap in today's market, just understand that that's extremely conservative, because interest rates are extremely low right now. Lowest historically, going back up again, right? And this is saying, had the cap rates been at this rate for the last 31 years, how would a hypothetical policy have earned? And we know that interest rates weren't that low for most of these 30 years. In fact, back in 1990, interest rates were 7 to 8%. I mean, I remember making six something on my money market funds at that point in time. So interest rates do not stay constant. They're not likely to stay as low as they are right now. So any illustration run at today's low interest rates is very likely to be a very conservative estimate of how your policy is going to do over the long run. All right, so the next tab is one that you may have seen in a lot of my videos. This is it shows you what a perfectly designed policy looks like. So we set the death benefit to an increasing option. Again, none of this matters whether it's index universal life or whole life. The data is data. So I'm just graphing what the death benefit is in orange compared to the cash value in blue. And we're keeping the death benefit to an absolute minimum at every point in this insured's lifetime. We're not buying any more death benefit right from the start. We're not buying any more death benefit than we absolutely have to over time as we're paying premium. And once we stop paying premium, we're slashing the death benefit further to keep the cost to a minimum. So the real cost in a life insurance policy is the risk associated with this delta between the cash value and the death benefit. That's how much money the insurance company has to come up with to pay claims, right? If you were to pass away. So the insurance company takes out costs to put into a pool in order to pay all the claims on those 48-year-olds, for example, who aren't going to make it to 49. So And this is just simply there to show you that the policy is perfectly designed. This next tab is the expense ratios, and these numbers in green here simply flow right from the raw data that we brought in off to the side. So to the extent that you've got that data, you can plug it in. I'm not sure what good it does you without, actual illustration. But here we've got the actual charges for this particular policy with $50,000 annual premium. So I'm looking at or calculating two different things. Most people want to know what are the fees of my policy as a percentage of the premium that I'm paying. And once I'm done paying premium, how are the fees going to impact the cash value over time? So this particular client was putting in $50,000 a year for 8 years, and then ceasing payments from that point on. So if you look back at this graph, you can see that we're slashing the death benefit at that time. But here, during the years that he is paying premium, his costs range anywhere between 11.57% up to 13.79%, well below the 85% cash value to premium ratio that you often hear me mentioning in a lot of my videos. But this is a 40-year-old, he's healthy, non-smoker. We can expect a little bit better than average. Now, during the years after he stops paying premium, now his primary concern becomes what are the expenses as a percentage of my cash value? I mean, how are the fees going to eat up the policy? And for the first 10 years of the policy, right through here, there's a policy issue charge, which is where the insurance company makes money. In fact, you can see it better off to the side here. That charge goes away after 10 years, it drops completely off. But for the 2 years that it's still in there, it's making up about, the total fees make up about 1% of the growth of the policy, of the cash value. So again, if your cash value is earning 5%, but your expenses are 1.4, 1.1, let's just go with 1, then you're netting 4. I should say that again. If your policy's cash value is making 5 and your expenses are 1%, you're netting 4%. So that 4% is being added to the cash value. Now, under this other charges column, these are in this specific incidence, there's a charge for the early cash value rider of this policy, which is an IUL, and that charge runs through the 16th policy year. Actually, it looks like 18th. So during the years that's there, you can see that the fees are a little bit higher, right, just under 0.6 of 1%. But you can see that after the 18th year, when the only charges being assessed on the policy are the actual cost of insurance, you can see that the expenses are down around the 0.13 to 0.1617, I think I see there. These are very low, like index mutual fund low. And most people, when they see this, are extremely pleased because they did not have any idea that the expenses on a life insurance policy could be this low. So moving on, the next tab is labeled LIRP. That's Life Insurance Retirement Plan. So this is simply showing you an A versus B comparison, as apples to apples as you can get, of a comparison between life insurance and investing in traditional assets and saving for retirement. So the data from the life insurance policy are in columns C, D, and E. You can see the premium, the cumulative premium, and the cash value accumulating over time. But what if you took $50,000 a year and invested it in something else, mutual funds, whatever, real estate, and you could make 9% on your money? And I'm not assuming a Roth IRA. I'm not assuming a traditional IRA. This is just straight money in a brokerage account where you would pay taxes, income taxes on any dividend income or capital gains tax on any capital gains that you have. So you can play with the tax bracket here to kind of come up with a hybrid weighted average between ordinary income tax rates and capital gains tax rates, depending on where you think yours might be. But you don't have to use the tax rates that I've gotten here. And anything, mind you, anything in blue is flowing into this spreadsheet from another place. Anything in yellow is a user adjustable parameter that you can change. So here, $50,000 invested at 9%. You can see that I'm accounting for the growth, the gross income, taxes, net income is being assumed to be being reinvested. And the output of this are the graphs off to the side. The top one is let me just get my little marker, total accumulation projections. So here we're looking at how much do we have if we were to look at our statements that are coming from the broker every quarter. And here, if we look out at retirement age, traditional retirement age, because nobody's going to retire at 65 anymore, you can see how much you would have had in terms of pure accumulation. And as you might expect, if you're putting money into an investment growing at 9%, even though it's taxable, you're going to outperform life insurance, which we're assuming is growing at, in this case, 5.22, less than 5.25%. So clearly, you end up at age 65 with more money in traditional investments. But traditional investments, your accumulation does not pay or put food on the table. The analogy I like to make is, it's simply a quarterly statement that you're getting from your broker, and it shows you what the value of your portfolio might be on that particular day. But it's just a piece of paper with numbers on it. You have to actually sell something and have them send you a check so that you've got money that you can spend on anything. So I think it's much more important to look at how much income you can get from your savings. Income is what pays the bills. And here we can see that the tables are flipped a little bit. And the reason for that is life insurance, because you're not physically taking any money out of your policy, you're borrowing against it. The principal, 100% of the principal plus the growth continues to grow and compound each year, even while your loan is growing and compounding. And when you run the numbers and when you figure out how this all works, you'll see that life insurance, so long as there is a 1% arbitrage between the cash value growth rate and the loan rate, which historically has always been there, at least 1%, 8% is like the magic number. 8% of however much cash value you have at the time you retire is how much you could take on a level basis for the rest of your life. So the way you interpret this graph is you look at traditional retirement age here. Let me just put some dots on there. And you look at age 65 and you go up to see where the orange line intersects the y-axis, and you can see where something just under $100,000, so maybe $90,000, we'll call that, 85,000. You could take $85,000 a year for the rest of your life. If you waited until age 70 to retire, you could probably take about $120,000 a year for the rest of your life. So that's how you interpret the graphs. You simply go down to the age and across to the amount of money that you have. Whoops, I can't draw a straight line with the mouse. The blue line, I'm using the common 4% rule. And I just, if you don't want to take my word for it, I would recommend just Google 4% rule, and you'll learn that financial advisors use the 4% rule as just a rule of thumb for how much income you can take from your retirement savings each year and not risk running out of money before you pass away. It's designed to weather the ups and downs of the markets, but not run out. So 4% of a higher number up top, where the blue line was higher, is not greater than 8% of that lower number, as you can see here. In fact, the delta between these two, I mean, if I were to split the difference here on the blue, you could see that the difference between the blue line and the orange line is greater than the middle of the spread on the blue line. So that's greater than 50% income off the same exact amount of money being put away each year into savings and growing at a lower rate. So this right here is the primary beauty of a life insurance retirement plan. All of this is before we're talking about the double play, which is leveraging the cash value of a maximum overfunded life insurance policy to invest in real estate. So I want you to understand that, if you have any questions on this, feel free to set up a time on my calendar. I would prefer it, if you're not serious about buying a policy, to book some time, buy some consulting time in my online store. If you're just kicking the tires, I prefer that you pay me for the use of my time. I can always refund that money to you if you ever decide to buy a policy. But I don't have time to go through all these questions with people that aren't serious about buying life insurance. All right, so the grand finale here is the actual double play model. Here we're looking at an apples to apples comparison of putting $50,000 a year for 8 years into a permanent life insurance policy, and then leveraging the resulting cash value to invest in real estate or something earning, in this case here, 9%. Versus just simply taking $50,000 a year from your income or savings or whatever and using that to invest in the same exact assets. We want to know which one is going to leave you better off. So that's the purpose of this graph. Let me kind of go through the sections on here. Up in the upper left corner, these are in yellow are the user adjustable parameters. In blue are the data that are flowing into it from the tab that we pasted in that had your life insurance illustration data. So don't overwrite anything in blue unless you are conscious of the fact that you're overwriting that. But the yellow inputs, the loan to cash value is just simply a ratio of, we're not going to borrow 100% of the cash value. So if you're going to the insurance company and you're getting a policy loan, which I don't recommend, I need to adjust the illustration because the illustration is showing you the end of your value. So there's 5.22% of growth in here that wouldn't be there at the beginning of the year. So we need to back that out. So 90% is more than enough fudge factor to account for backing out the 5% growth. By the same token, if you show your account values statement to a bank, you can get a cash value line of credit. So you just give the bank an assignment of collateral. Their loan is 100% secured. But typically, they will give you up to 90% of this number, what's on your actual illustration. Or what's even better is they will look at your account value statement. So all of the expenses that we looked at on the prior tab, it's important to understand that those aren't taken out all at one time up front. They're taken out in increments monthly, and they add up to that total number. So at the beginning of your policy year, your cash value is actually much higher on your account value statement. So when the bank is giving you a loan of 90% cash value, 90% of your cash value, you're actually getting much more than what's shown on your illustration. So I hope that's clear to you. The next one is the loan rates. Again, these are in today's current market. Prime rate is, in fact, I haven't even checked what prime rate is. Prime rate was down around 3, but with the rise in interest rates, I believe it's right around 4% right now. I haven't checked it today or even this week. The next line is the investment rate. So this is whatever you are assuming for the growth on your real estate or syndication or whatever you're investing in. So you can overwrite 9% if you don't think that's high enough, or if you think it's too high. You can put in whatever you want it to be. And then put in a tax bracket. Ideally, that tax bracket should be a weighted average of your state, not a weighted average, just the combination of your state and federal, the sum of your state and federal taxes. Don't use a weighted average. I misspoke there. A lot of people they don't consider their total picture. So if you're working for a living and you're making $150,000 a year, anything extra that you make in investments is going to be taxed at your highest. That's all new income coming in at your highest tax bracket because you've already made the rest. So your 150,000 is made up of some money in the 15% tax bracket, some money in the 20% tax bracket, and so on up to the highest. But any new money through investments, you need to look at your marginal tax bracket, which is the highest one. And I said all that just because that subject has come up many times. Deduct interest. This, just leave it as yes. You don't want to do the double play and not be able to deduct the interest. And to deduct the interest, you need to get a cash value line of credit from a third-party financial institution, not an insurance company. Policy loan interest is not tax deductible. I know people doing it, but and they're doing it with the advice of their CPAs. But if you don't properly handle the interest, the flow of the money, you're setting yourself up for trouble if you get audited. All right, so let's walk through this. Again, understand everything in yellow can be changed by you. Everything in orange, in the pale orange here, this is coming from your life insurance illustration, so you cannot change these values without updating the illustration that this is all feeding from. So this data does not change. All of these inputs only apply to what we're doing with the money, what we're investing in. The loan to cash value is how much of a loan you're going to take, what rate that loan is going to be at, how much we're going to make with that money, and what you're going to pay in taxes on that income. So, moving across here, your policy should have finished up the year at $46,524, but that's assuming 5.22% growth that hasn't occurred yet. So we need to back that out. So we're just assuming that you're only going to borrow $41,872. Since it's the first year, you're not reinvesting anything, so there's no reinvestment. I am assuming everything's going to be reinvested. Another important thing to understand is I'm assuming discrete one-year investments here. That, obviously that's not going to be the case in reality. You could buy a house and hold it for 20 years. But mathematically, as long as the sum of all my one-year investments sums up to it's mathematically the same as a 20-year constant hold. It's just I'm trying to show the money being maximally deployed every single year. Think of it as buying a 12-month note and simply paying off that note at the end of the year. So total invested, $41,872. If you had invested it at 9%, it would have earned $3,768. So once everything closes out at the end of the year, you would have $45,640 in the bank. From there, you're going to write a check to the bank to pay the interest on the loan. That's $1,675. You're going to pay the loan principal back, the 41,872, sorry. Again, since it's the first year, you're not going to get any money back because you didn't put any in. After that, you're left with $2,094 of taxable income. Tax at 35% is $733, and you finish up the year with net income of $1,361. In year 2, let me clear this. You've paid another $50,000 premium, or you haven't, but this person has. Your cash value is up to $95,000 projected at the end of the year. We're assuming you're borrowing $85,631 this year, and you're reinvesting the $1,361 from gain from the previous year. So money money borrowed against the policy, and money that you're simply reinvesting. And beyond this point, everything is exactly the same. It just goes on year after year after year after year. Now, let's slide the graph or a spreadsheet over, and let's take a look at the other scenario where we would be taking $50,000 of our money and reinvesting it each year and just investing it directly into an investment, making the same 9% return. So here, 50,000, first year you're not reinvesting anything, so total invested is 50,000. You've got gross income of 4,500 at 9%, paying the tax, that's writing a check to the IRS for 1,575, and you've got net income that you can reinvest of 2,925. I'm condensing the calculations here a little bit, but you're investing another 50,000. The $2,925 gain is already rolled into the reinvested part, so the total invested is 102,925. And beyond this point, everything is exactly the same. You're just closing everything out at the end of every year, reinvesting it the following year. So the output of this spreadsheet are these two graphs, which are very similar to what you just saw earlier in the life insurance retirement plan. But the big difference here is the life insurance, the orange line, is actually higher than the blue line. On a life insurance retirement plan, as you might expect, if you're investing your money in at 9% versus 5%, 9% is going to have a steeper exponential growth curve. But here, we're putting our money to work in two places at one time. So we're able to look at the growth on the cash value and the net growth that we're creating outside of the policy after you close out the loans each year. And you can see that, for the first, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, I mean, it's really hard to see any difference between the two lines because of the massive scale of difference at the end here. So it's hard to see where the crossover point occurs. But you can, I mean, obviously, if $50,000 of premium turns into about $40,000 of cash value that you can access, you're taking a $10,000 haircut every single time you pay a premium. But if that $40,000 can grow at a greater rate of growth, because you've got that 5.22% growth on the 40,000, plus if you're borrowing against it at 4% and you can invest it at 9, you're making 9 or 5% on that spread. And then you got the tax advantage there too, because you're not paying tax on 9%, you're paying tax on the reduced amount, the net, after the loan. So what is that, 6? And when you take away the tax from the 6%, you're left with more money. So somewhere along here, it's hard to see, the sum of the cash value and the money that you're creating, the wealth that you're creating outside the policy begins to take off. and start to separate. But, again, this is the accumulation. This is only a number on a piece of paper. It's not income. So on the income side, the bottom graph, here I'm using the 8% rule that I had for life insurance on the life insurance portion of it. But on the excess wealth that we're creating outside the policy, I'm assuming 4%. So the income here is coming from two sources, right? I'm assuming, for the purposes of this example, that all of the loans are paid off at the time that you decide to retire. So let's look at age 65 here, just standard retirement age. Put some dots on the curve so you can see where I'm talking. Here you can see that the income, if we assume that the $50,000 a year going into the 9% investment, and you could withdraw it at a rate of 4%, it looks like you'd be at about $60,000 a year that you could take for the rest of your life and not worry about running out of money. If you had your money invested in life insurance and real estate, doing the double play, it looks to me like you're going to make a little bit more than twice as much in terms of annual income. That looks to me like about $115,000 to $120,000 a year. So when I assume that all the loans are paid off at the time you retire, that means that that all the rest of the cash value, I mean, assuming that you were to borrow $120,000 against the policy here, you might have well more than $1 million of actual cash value to generate that. So the question is, what could you be doing with the rest of that money? I mean, are you just leaving it unleveraged and growing in the life insurance policy? I mean, there's really no reason to do what I did, which was assume that all the loans are paid off and just look at the two pieces in isolation. You can keep that money working as long as you can. You just need to make sure that you pay back some of the loans every year to make sure that you don't dip too far into the collateral between the real estate and the loans that you're taking for income. And I hope that makes sense. But bottom line here is this: the double play absolutely, positively works. You will earn more over time, despite the fact that the life insurance comes with high fees and expenses. You will grow your wealth at a faster rate, and you'll generate more income. Like this 40-year-old in 25 years is going to have more than twice as much income by doing this with $50,000 a year for 8 years than he would have had just taking $50,000 a year for 8 years and putting it directly into real estate. So with that, I tried to combine two things into one there. I'm walking you through how the double play model works and how to update it at the same time as I'm explaining how it actually is presenting the data to you. And I'm not going to go through the calculations. Just take my word for it that the calculations do exactly what I said they did. So you can go through and audit it yourself. But really, all you need to do is get an illustration and transpose the numbers into the back end here where it says paste illustrations here. Ideally, do it on a clean sheet and paste it in, and then look at your results. But I mean, keep in mind too, if you want good data for the expenses, you need to have a life insurance illustration that has those expenses for you. So with that, again, I want to remind you, if you want me to run an illustration for you, if you're serious about moving forward with a life insurance policy, by all means, reach out, use the link, set up an appointment on my calendar. I'm happy to do that for you. If you're just kicking the tires and you just want to see what the data look like, I would appreciate it if you would purchase some consulting time on my online store, and we go from there. But I'm happy to spend as much time with you as it takes to make sure that you feel absolutely comfortable that this does exactly what I say it does.